Hey everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Harper Byers and I work for the School-Based Health Alliance. I am so excited to welcome you all to our Be the Change session, Self-Efficacy and Self-Advocacy in Adolescent Health. We would love it if you could turn your cameras on as we get started, but know that it is not required. And with that, I will pass it to our presenters to get us started. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for another day of our Be the Change week. I am going to start us off just introducing our topic. Today we'll be covering self-efficacy and self-advocacy in adolescent health, and I'll introduce myself and our presenters today. So my name is Audrey Gabriel. I am a rising senior at the University of Massachusetts studying public health and microbiology, and I am a member of our Youth Advisory Council. Pass it over to Byla.
Hi, everyone. My name is Byla. I go to George Washington University. I'm a rising junior, and I'm very excited to get to this presentation. Brooklyn. Yes.
Hi, I'm Brooklyn. I am an upcoming junior at the University of Arkansas. I am a nursing major, and I'm also a member of the Youth Advisory Council, and I'll pass it to Chris.
Hello, my name is Chris Oshana. I'm a third-year member of the Youth Advisory Council and a rising senior at the University of Michigan.
All right, so we'll jump right into it. So today we are going to talk about what self-efficacy and self-advocacy are. You'll see me abbreviate these as C. Then we'll talk about why C matters and how it pertains to adolescent health, and then we'll wrap it up. But first we have an activity for you all. First we have our objectives. So hopefully by the end of this session, you will have gained a deeper understanding of what self-efficacy and advocacy are, and also the distinctions between the two. You know, they're related, but they also do have very separate meanings. And then we'll work through some scenarios in healthcare settings and adolescent health, where having skills in self-efficacy and advocacy play really important roles to having a positive health outcome. And we'll identify ways in which school-based health centers and youth advisory councils can help to foster learning and growth in these matters. So now we'll get right into our introduction activity. Feel free to unmute yourself or put your answer into the chat, but what this is just like an alphabet introduction. I'm sure you've done it before in a lot of your other circles. So you'll introduce yourself, where you're from, and an adjective to describe you that also starts with the first letter of your name. So for example, my name is Audrey, I'm from Massachusetts, and an adjective to describe me is authentic. Pass it over anyone in the chat. Okay, well, that's okay. We can just go right ahead. Feel free to jump into the chat if you can. But otherwise, we'll just jump right in. So our first portion of the day is just defining what self-efficacy and advocacy are. So self-efficacy is this belief, or an individual's belief in his or her capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainment. Really, it's your self-confidence in being able to succeed at something. And this is something that can grow. It's not like just a concrete thing. You have the capacity to build your self-efficacy, which is what we aim to do today. There are 4 different sources of self-efficacy. So things like mastery experiences, whether or not you have done something well before, maybe you didn't do all too well at it. These really have the biggest effect on your self-efficacy and your belief to do something correctly in the future. Another part that plays into your feeling of self-efficacy are vicarious experiences. So when you see others perform that same task, and you see them do it well, or things that they can improve on, that also contributes to how you think you can perform on that task. Another part of it is verbal persuasion. So getting feedback like positive reinforcements or any constructive criticism can affect how you feel about that task. And finally, your physiological state, how you're feeling physically and emotionally affects how you feel you're personally competent at something. So if you're well rested, if you're feeling like very calm and meditative, that can really contribute to a good feeling of self-efficacy. But maybe if you're overworked, tired, feeling anxious, that can really affect how you feel. And it's good to be aware and cognizant of how you're doing physically and how that affects how you're doing mentally and your feelings of self-confidence. And then all of these contributing factors to self-efficacy from your own experiences, others, from feedback, and just your physical state also play out in how you take that self-efficacy and what you do with it. So it influences things like your choices, whether you approach a situation or avoid it. It can impact your resilience, the amount of effort and persistence you can put into a task. It impacts thinking and decision-making, and also plays a role into your emotional reactions.
Okay, so in this slide, we're going to be looking into what self-efficacy means to us as the Youth Advisory Council. And Audrey can just start and we will just go throughout.
Yeah, so self-efficacy to me means having the agency for change.
For me, I describe it as how confident I am in myself to achieve the things that I want. How much do I believe in myself and believe in the efforts to go after my goals?
For me, I think that self-efficacy is being able to achieve a goal based on what I already know, have, and or want.
And for me, I feel like self-efficacy is the ability to understand that I can enact change and control things in my own life, that I can really achieve what I put my mind to, and that like I can kind of take charge of things that might feel out of my control sometimes.
So we'll take this time. Feel free to share what self-efficacy means to you or any personal experiences that you have. Again, either in the chat or unmuting yourself.
Okay, so now we are going to have a poll to see like your personal opinion on whether or not you think self-efficacy is very difficult to very easy. So you can, if you feel comfortable, you can just put in the chat whether or not you feel self-efficacy is difficult or easy for you if you feel comfortable. And I do see some responses. There are many people saying that two people saying it's difficult. Chris is saying at times it can be very difficult, but once you get started, continue gets easier. Harper says it's varied. Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. And I definitely relate to that. I think for me, it depends on the task. It depends on whether or not it aligns with my strengths or not. So these are all great answers. Thank you all for your responses. So the next poll is looking at, it's not really a poll, you can, like I said, just put in the chat if you feel comfortable, whether or not you think self-efficacy is very important to not important at all. And so let's see what responses we have. Yep, we have most people saying it's very important. Yeah, everybody is saying it's very important. And I definitely agree, because I think that aspect of being able to believe in yourself is like the foundation of going after anything. If you don't believe that you can actually do it, if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe in your ability to make it real, then you are less likely to actually go after it. So it is very important, and I'm glad that everybody recognizes that. And it's interesting to see that we all think it's very important, but it also varies in its difficulty. So as important as it is, it's definitely not an easy thing to just have right off the bat, and it's something that we can all build. So thank you for your responses. So now, this is more personal. And again, you really don't have to share out the responses for this one specifically, but this is a self-efficacy scale for you to basically assess yourself on whether or not you are higher or lower on self-efficacy. And there's nothing wrong with being on either end. It just tells you a lot more about yourself. So you can just rate how you relate to these sentences. And yes, like Chris said in the chat, definitely feel free to think about this later as you self-evaluate. It's just something that you can keep in mind for yourself. But we don't have to like talk about this or share this out. It's more so for you.
Awesome. So we covered self-efficacy, and now we can talk about self-advocacy and what the distinction is between the two. So self-advocacy is kind of the combination of your feelings of self-efficacy. It's your ability to effectively communicate, convey, negotiate, or assert your interests, desires, needs, and rights. And so this is super important to your likelihood to thrive and be successful in school, work, and all aspects of your life. There are tons of different aspects to self-advocacy. So in addition to just speaking up for yourself, it's staying informed, knowing your rights, finding support in a supportive network, it's being able to problem solve, having feelings of self-determination, like you are in charge of your own path and the choices that you make, and being able to ask for help. And so here's what self-advocacy means to the Youth Advisory Council. For me, it's having the ability to communicate and ask for your needs, your wants, and your interests. And being able to ask for that is really what I want to emphasize, because there are going to be so many situations in your life where all you need to do really is ask for something and ask for that help. If it's not immediately available to you, being able to speak up and voice your need for it is super important.
Yes, I definitely agree with Audrey. I think it's important to speak up because we really don't have to do everything ourselves. It's much more efficient and better for you if you just hand it over or work with others. But for me, it's like seeing the worth in my needs, wants, and being able to communicate that, and the worth in like my own energy and my own time, and that I can't do everything by myself. I can't figure out everything by myself. So if I need clarity on something, it's, to me, self-advocacy is putting yourself on, I guess, the equal pedestal as everyone else, like as equal as everyone else, to the point where your needs and again your wants are all worthy of being advocated for.
For me, self-advocacy is being able to say what I want or need and feeling empowered or comfortable in a specific situation, or just in general in regular day-to-day things to do so.
And for me, I feel like it is being able to take charge of a situation, and that you have like understanding that you have a seat at the table. So, really taking your situation that you're in and saying, I know that I have the ability to control this.
And so again, we ask that if you're comfortable, please feel free to share out what self-advocacy means to you in the chat or unmuting yourself. But you can also just reflect back on your past experiences.
Okay, so this is similar to what we did with self-efficacy, but just rate how you view self-advocacy as very difficult or very easy. Um, I personally have found it to be difficult for me, but it's something that's now becoming more easier as I recognize the importance of it and I see how it impacts me by not advocating for myself. Um, Brooklyn says that it's, yeah, similar to me. It can be difficult, but we're all working on it. Harper says neutral, recognizing and communicating needs are a continuing practice. Yep. So it seems like it's a continuing thing for everyone. Um, Difficult depending on the situation. We have another difficult. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And think that it's something that can always be worked on as long as you're consciously aware um, of its influence. I think that's everyone. So this one says, just again, rate how important you think self-advocacy is. Yep, we have a lot of very importance, and I would have to agree as well. Like I said, I think if you don't advocate for yourself, then you miss out on the opportunity to, you miss out on just a lot of opportunities in general to advocate and communicate your needs and wants. So thank you all for your responses. This is another self-advocacy scale. Again, this is more personal. You don't have to share it out if you don't want to. Just, I guess, keep it as a mental note and skim through the phrase, the sentences to see whether or not or where you lie on the self-advocacy scale.
All right, so we've learned a little bit about what self-efficacy is and what self-advocacy is. And so a little activity we have for you all, maybe to reflect on or just put your thoughts into the chat, is just what you think the difference is between the two. And you can do it in like a Venn diagram form, listing out what you think self-efficacy is and self-advocacy is and where they intersect. And we'll get into that more later, but again, feel free to put your thoughts into the chat or do it individually. So as you're thinking on that and just where the intersection is between self-efficacy and advocacy, I'm going to go into the importance of it and different places that you can apply these things to your life. So really, to me, self-efficacy builds into your self-advocacy to create this cycle of success. When you have feelings of self-efficacy and you're self-confident, you feel competent in your ability to succeed, and you have like the power to do a task, that really creates a feeling of empowerment for you to be ready to take action and use your skills, use the resources around you. And then that leads to you self-advocating. So you have those feelings that you can do something, and now you're just advocating for yourself, speaking on your behalf about your wants and your needs, asking for help when you need it. And then that self-advocacy turns into a mastery experience. After you do that correctly once, your self-efficacy builds up because you have the ability and the competency to advocate for yourself. So it really creates this whole cycle of success throughout your entire life in so many different aspects. And whether that's doing well on a test and studying really hard for it, whether that's asking for help from your doctor for like a health issue, wherever you see that self-advocacy portion of your life, you're creating more self-efficacy for yourself and empowering yourself to advocate more later on. And so I wanted to share this quote with you from Albert Bandura, who was the person who really created the theory of self-efficacy. And it says that self-belief does not necessarily ensure success, but self-disbelief assuredly spawns failure. So having that self-efficacy alone is super important, and it won't necessarily lead to like success, but not having it in general will definitely impact your ability to thrive. So just keeping that in mind as you move forward and learn things today. And so I want to bring it all to you of places you think that self-advocacy could be useful. Again, you can unmute, share in the chat if you're comfortable, or just self-reflect on aspects of your life where you think you might need self-advocacy. Oh, and then I see in the chat, we have some comments on what self-advocacy is and just identifying the ways you need to support yourself, especially in relation to the communities and systems you're part of. And then self-efficacy is knowing the resources to do so. I think that's a really succinct and really great way to phrase the intersection between the two and the distinction. And then places where people think self-advocacy could be useful, definitely in relationships, whether it's friends, family, maybe with your teachers, your professors, your teammates, things like that. When discussing my healthcare plan with my provider, that's also another really important aspect of where self-advocacy is probably the most useful. And any situations with power imbalances, so school and work, definitely self-advocacy is useful there. And we have school, relationships, work, and health. These are all really great examples of places where you can take these skills, take that feeling of self-efficacy, and empower yourself to advocate. And this is kind of the same thing. I think you all answered the question pretty well already of where self-efficacy could be useful. So in all those situations that you all listed, that's where feeling empowered could help. But it also, I think, helps with just personal decisions. And when you're kind of rationalizing with yourself and reflecting on how you're feeling about situations, self-efficacy can be a really useful tool in meditating and grounding yourself and knowing that you're competent and you have the skills that you need. And so, yeah, areas that you can apply both skills of self-efficacy and advocacy, definitely in self-awareness, knowing your rights and being to advocate for those, communicating between people, in leadership positions, in school, and in your personal life. These things will continue to come up.
All right, so it's my turn. So now we're going to be moving into adolescent health and how self-efficacy and self-advocacy can come into both your health and SPHC's. Okay, so I wanted to start, I know this slide is not the same, but I wanted to start and say that if you don't have a school-based health center is a health center on campus at a school. Mine was at my high school. Everyone's is different, but it provides physical and basic healthcare needs. Mine has a dental office and eye care center, also helps with mental health. So kind of just this place that it's really easy to access all of your healthcare needs. So in regards to self-efficacy and self-advocacy, although it may be scary, speaking up about your needs and wants in a healthcare setting will allow not only you, but also the provider to adequately understand, which we kind of talked about a few minutes ago when we chatted, where we feel like self-efficacy could be useful. I thought this was interesting. I wanted to include this because I think a lot of times, especially I know for me as a student, I always feel like I can never speak up for myself, especially in healthcare. So I wanted to include just 3 things that I think would be helpful going into an appointment or when you need to consult your doctor. So asking are there other options for this type of medication or treatment options for this area that I need work on? Would this method work better? I've heard many good results from my peers. And then I've had a bad reaction to that medication in the past. I think all of these do a really good job of communicating your wants and needs and allowing the provider to hear your opinions. Okay, so how do you believe that SPHCs can help empower students, especially in this area? You can feel free to unmute yourself or you can chat. All right. Audrey said, SVHCs can make youth advisory councils like ours so youth can empower their peers. I definitely agree with that. I think that youth advisory councils are a really great addition. Empowering them to take charge of their healthcare by creating events and workshops for students to empower them. Yes, I agree. We're talking about that later, actually. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so I'm going to ask Violet to unmute just to talk about her experience with self-efficacy and self-advocacy in her school-based health center.
So SBHCs empowered students in my high school to understand their health needs despite having financial difficulties. Because of the community that I was in, there were a lot of students who came from families that weren't as privileged or fortunate. And so having that access at school was really beneficial and helped them to understand the importance of health, even though it might not seem important with everything else that you have going on. So definitely a necessary in my high school.
Thank you for sharing. Personally, I think that my school-based health center, I think that the providers that I spoke with and worked with, I think that they did a really good job of like wanting to hear my opinion and really taking the time to ask me how I was feeling about the treatment plan or asking me how I was feeling in general, because it really helped me when I got to college, and not everyone is as kind in college, I've noticed. And so it was really nice because I was able to still communicate my care and concern, even if they weren't as receptive to it. Okay, and then, oh, there's a chat. SPHCs are important when it comes to educating students on issues that might be controversial. Oh, that is a really good point. Thank you for sharing, Benjamin. I haven't really thought of that yet, but that's a really good point. Thank you. SVHCs could make themselves readily available for consultation for a variety of issues and market themselves on the campuses through students, posters, or creating youth advisory council. I think that creating youth advisory council is a really good way because I think a lot of times it's easier to come to other students with problems and ask them for help. And so the youth advisory council can kind of be a segue between the school-based health center and the students. And then also making themselves readily available at any point, whether that be through email or call or just walking in, so that the student feels like they can come at any point and it's not like they have to make an appointment, and that they're always welcome to the school-based health center.
Okay, so that brings us to just wrapping up and closing out this presentation. I'll take it away.
Okay, so basically just to bring everything together that we talked about today, increasing self-efficacy comes down to getting out of your comfort zone. I know we've all heard the phrase that the magic happens outside of your comfort zone, and it's true. If you always do what you're used to doing, if you're always kind of in that box and you never experience what's outside of it, and that's where this bigger picture comes in of seeing the overall end point and overall end goal that might feel uncomfortable right now to jump outside of that comfort zone. But until you put yourself in new experiences, then we don't experience new things. And lastly, just having a growth mindset to reframe how you view challenges as just opportunities to get better. Self-advocacy, just to wrap that part up, is to basically don't be afraid to ask for help that we just talked about. Prepare it, you feel much more comfortable expressing yourself and if this is a difficulty for you, you'll feel much more comfortable if you prepare in advance so you know what you're going to say, and so you won't feel like flustered or embarrassed if you say something wrong, for example. And then that also ties into having just clear and defined goals for what it is that you want at the end of the day. So thank you all for your attention. Thank you for your responses. And hopefully we helped you understand more about your personal self-advocacy and self-efficacy.
All righty. Thank you so much.
I find it, I really enjoyed that presentation. I found that almost everyone answered difficult, and then how important it was. They were like, oh, it's very difficult, but it's very important. So it was nice that in that wrap up, we were told kind of how we can work towards making something that's very important not as difficult. Well, my name is Yara Carrillo. I am the Youth Development Intern at SBHA, and I want to thank you all for joining our session. Our next session will start in a little bit less than 45 minutes. If you have not registered for this session, I encourage you to register using the link in the chat. Remember, every session is an additional entry to the BTC raffle for Spotify Premium for a whole year. So if you would like to stay in contact with us, here are a few ways. You can check out our Instagram and our Twitter at SBHA YAC, or you can email the Youth Advisory Council at youthadvisorycouncil@sbh4all.org. If you are interested in youth development, there are some ways that you can get involved with that, which is subscribing to our Youth Development Digest, which is sent out every month. You can check out our Youth Health Hub, which is our new youth-focused website. And you can also get in contact with us at youthdevelopment@sbh4all.org. This concludes our session for today, and thank you all for joining. We hope to see you next session.